Good morning. This is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And today we're coming at you with a very special episode of crowdfunding. So this week we have 4 games that have recently delivered into the SideGame library or that we got to play through other means. And here are my thoughts and opinions on them. So these are all newly delivered games, and we're just going to kind of give those initial thoughts and say, hey, are these games one that I'm either going to keep in the library or am I going to seek out? Are they worthy additions to this game? So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is Western Legends. And if you aren't familiar with the Western Legends franchise, let's go ahead and jump into what that is as a whole. So Western Legends is a sandbox adventure game where you're going to be taking place as a cowboy in the Wild Wild West. You're going to be moving around from place to place, interacting any way you see fit on the board. Obviously, some strategies are going to yield more points than others. There's prospecting where you can get a lot of money. You can be a marshal and arrest all sorts of bandits, and all of these different things are going to allow you to generate these legend points, and that's how you eventually will end up winning the game. Now, the standard game is all based on a simple action system. On your turn, you get to do 2 things, and you can also play these poker cards in your hand that are also going to let you do additional actions. And each of those poker cards has some variable effect that's going to do something generally pretty strong for you. There's a bunch of different cards for the different suits that you can now play with that are interchangeable, but the new expansion here is what we're here to actually talk about. So Western Legends Blood Money is the new title of the expansion, and the way it works is you are simply going to be adding some new tokens that introduce a couple of things to the game. Now, the first thing that's introduced are the actual systems, the story systems, and this is going to be a large board that is placed on top of the old board, and that board is going to essentially upgrade the events and how integral they are into the mechanics and the story of Western Legends. So you not only have some effect that's happening and some achievements you can make, but also a passive ability. For example, the train might be run down and it no longer works for this round, or you may be spawning additional events every round, or the sheriff might be missing and you may have to worry about them somehow. So there's lots of different things that can happen, and the objectives are also very appropriate. For example, if the sheriff's missing, you may have to go check in to the sheriff's station and apply for a new one, or something similar to that nature. So there's lots of cool little thematic tidbits here. In addition, when the cards are flipped, they're going to generally do some really big impactful thing. So this is my favorite part of the new expansion, and I think it works really well. It just covers that main board and has a new way for you to kind of generate points using these story points. It's a bit more important there. The other things that it includes are naturally more items. So you're going to have all sorts of these new legendary items, and you're also going to have new characters. There's also this traveling caravan that's going to be having a way where you can actually purchase legendary items instead of getting them through the random ways that you normally would. And I really like that idea here. It also comes off with more of these cards that can replace cards in the main game, so I really like that. More options is always good. It's going to change up that gameplay. But the other huge major thing that it adds to this game are the deed cards. So in this game, you can actually own the buildings now. So say you go to the saloon and you say, oh, I'm actually just going to buy this place. You can. They usually cost about $80. You can purchase the saloon. And what it does is it gives you an action you can take in the future that's going to be a one-time effect. So for example, this Cliff Junction mine, you can flip it to just move straight to the mine and get a free gold nugget. So it's usually most of these work with like a teleportation way where you'll just get zoomed back to the location. And the endgame scoring is going to have something to do with usually those locations or something about them. So for example, if you own one of the taverns where you're going to be playing poker, they score additional points for the more taverns that you own. So this gives you a little goal that you're going to go to. But when we played it, we found out that these endgame scorings were not as viable as the points that you would be getting during the game. The max that you could really get for a full set was somewhere around the 9 to 10 points category. So it wasn't something that we really felt that was worth pursuing. It was a lot more efficient to just sell all of your money to the, there's like a brothel that you can go to. So it was a lot more efficient to just do that for any extra cash, or to just upgrade your items so that you could access some of the events or do some more legendary things. So unfortunately, this one did not really seem like a strategy that was worth seeking out, but it was still still fun and still unique that you were able to own these different places and get those special abilities if you wanted to take part in that strategy. I think that it does allow you, this new expansion allows you to really dabble into all of the different things instead of having to focus on one path, which was a criticism of the base game where you could really just say, okay, this game I'm just going to prospect, and every turn I'm going to roll dice and I'm going to run back and drop off nuggets and do that and do that. But I really like how the events really prioritize these new paths that you can take and really push you into unique different directions. So this, so far, I'm really impressed with this Blood Money expansion. And like I said, the event system, I think it really just permeates the whole experience. There are also some other neat things that you can do. One has to do with wounds. If you would ever take a damage that, and you can't, you instead take a wound card and they're going to give you some really debilitating effect. So you want to make sure you get those healed ASAP. So you are going to be making some more frequent visits to the doctor, it seems. And then the last thing that it adds are the what is it? What are they called? So you have this die. So it's like it's a wound die, something like this. So essentially, all you do is on your turn roll this die, and the die is going to let you get a story point if you succeed, or it's going to wound you somehow. And that's really it. I don't really like playing with this die because it really just introduces some randomness that you don't really need, and it increases you on the story track, which is also kind of funky because normally the story track rewards are meant for, hey, I actually did something to participate in the story. So it's kind of funky, very risky, and it's just something that we ended up not really using that much. We used it a couple times, and it became something that you just kind of forgot, or when you rolled it and you rolled poorly or rolled well, it just felt like it was very tacked on. So it felt like something you might find on like a mini expansion. So that's not one that I even recommend you even using. I think it's not thematic whatsoever. It doesn't really make sense to me. But everything else in this expansion, I would definitely get it for those large story events, for the new item cards, for the traveling salesman. Everything else I think is pretty much hit or miss here. So that's that. That is the Blood Money expansion for Western Legends. Overall, a great time, has some really unique things that are going to change up the game dramatically and drastically, but I think it's definitely a worthy addition for Western Legends. Now, the next game we're going to be talking about is a expansion for an existing game as well. This is going to be the City of Crowns expansion for Paladins of the West Kingdom. If you're not familiar with Paladins of the West Kingdom, it is a worker placement game where you're going to be taking all sorts of these worker placement actions generally on your own personal player board. So the whole idea is you're going to be picking a card, taking a bunch of workers, and then allocating them onto your personal board to move up these different attribute tracks. So each of these different attributes is going to feed into another action. So the higher your strength is, the better that you can fight, and that increases like your wisdom or something. And it's kind of like a cyclical chain here where all of them feed into each other, but there are multiple routes that use each of the different colors. So you not only have the spaces on your board that are going to be increasing those attributes, but you also have spaces in the center that are going to be revealed as you play. And so there's competition in that center for those shared spots. But the biggest thing here is that you are sharing specific resources in the middle in the form of assistant cards and in the form of these bandits or these barbarians. So the core interaction in this game is how fast can I get those things in the center, and how efficiently, and how do I prioritize them? Do I focus on getting a green card and for its effect? Do I recruit it, or do I need to make sure that I get that combat done over there? Or do I have to do things on my own personal board, which is putting me behind all that to make sure that I can do the stuff on the main board more efficiently? So you have lots of little choices here that make for a pretty dang compelling game. Now, me personally, I think that the interaction with the solo mode is actually a bit more tense, because with the solo mode, it's pretty scary because you have no idea what it's going to do. It has all of these different options that it can take, and so it's a lot more random in what it takes, and I think that makes it a bit more tense. And I actually prefer this one solo because I think that the gameplay experience is so personal. You're kind of doing your own thing for the majority of times, and you can really telegraph and see what other people are doing when you're playing that multiplayer. So there's actually not more tension in that multiplayer game. So I love the pace of the solo mode. I think it's done really well, but how does the City of Crowns expansion fit into this? Well, City of Crowns here, I think, is a must-buy expansion. I think this is so good, and the reason it's so good is because it feeds into all of the actions in the base game. So it's going to add these additional boards into the game, and the first one it adds is to your main player board. And this main player board is going to give you two new actions, the negotiate and the muster action. So the first action here is the negotiate. And the way it works is you are allowed to take a card from the center. And these negotiate cards have two different sides. So the first side relates to an action that already has been done on your main board. So you can set up your forts, you can set up your different you can set up your forts, you can go fight, you can do whatever. Like this card in particular says that you can build a new tower. So that's on the top there. But you need to have a certain threshold of whatever it says. In this case, you need 3 of this new negotiation trait that you get whenever you take the muster or the negotiate action. So you need that, but you get to take this additional action and at a better rate. So this one says you get +2 strength when you do so, and you don't have to pay the cost for the associated action. So it's kind of interesting. This is another thing that you're going to be competing for on the board. And not only is it powerful in the sense that you can kind of cheat out actions, but you can be very flexible in the actions you cheat out because you're getting this additional strength that you normally wouldn't have for this action. It's very simple, very straightforward, and I really like the way it works. That being said, instead of doing that top action, you can use it for the bottom. And the bottom action offers you a symbol, which will provide some endgame scoring, as well as increases that gray stat, which means that you can use more of those top parts of the negotiate actions. In addition, if you collect all of the symbols of a specific type, like this card here says you need 3 of these swords, then you get a continuous bonus that's going to happen at the end of every round. So this one says that you're going to get a worker every round, and you get an immediate bonus of getting rid of one of your conspiracy cards. So it makes a lot of sense here. You are either going for those symbols or you're going for those stronger actions. And this actually borrows a mechanism from Viscounts of the West Kingdom that I think works really, really well here as opposed to in that game. I feel like the actions you're doing here are a bit more satisfying, a bit more sequential, and a lot more interconnected as opposed to the ones in Viscounts where they are pretty dang disconnected. So it felt that it didn't really matter if you were getting those connecting symbols. Here it's a bit more important, which I think is really cool. The other action that you can do has to do with this top board here. So I want to make sure I have this Kickstarter page, and that is the muster action. And it uses this main board here, this new board extension. The way it's going to work is on that section, you're going to have these tiny little muster cards, and they offer these 2 different spaces. Now, first off, there are going to be 3 that are out on the board, now 4 that are on the board that you can visit from turn 1. You'll put a worker on there, you pay any associated costs. So in this case, you would pay a bag, and then you're going to get all of those purples. You're going to get rid of all the scheme cards on the bottom. So that is just something that is publicly available, which is really cool. Now, that being said, let me get some water really quick. Thank you very much for your time. So not only are you going to get rid of the different purple cards, but you're also going to be putting that card on that character and blocking it for everybody else. Now, the way that you kind of change and recover those cards are through that muster action. When you do it, you're going to, on that board, choose a card that does not have your main character on it, that orange character, and move him to a new one. And there's provisions in the center here. You make sure you pay that provision cost, you move that character, and then you pay for that card in a new way. So instead of putting the worker there, you've moved the orange character there. And so you just need to have whatever that trait says. In this case, 2 white. As a reward, you get one of the white values, and then you take that card, put it in front of you. Every 2 is going to be a point for you. And then you trigger that effect on the bottom. If anybody else had used that action, so if anybody did pay a bag to get rid of 3 purples, then you would also get the worker that was there. So it's kind of neat. You are wanting to make sure that people go to the muster actions that you want. That way you're getting more value out of taking the action. But you also want to kind of first come, first serve, get specific actions that you know are powerful. So it's a great choice of, do I wait and make sure that they collect the worker spots, or do I go ahead and jump on it now and just make sure I pick up the card that I really want? So I really like this choice here, and I think these 2 actions are pretty dang fantastic. Now, the last big thing that it changes to the game is just the way that the board is set up. Instead of having just set a row, you're actually going to flip the decks over, and you now have just a draw deck, so you'll always have an option to attack something or buy something no matter what part in the game. Now, this does reduce that amount of tension in the center with your options being super limited in the original, but because you're also fighting for those negotiate cards as well as the different muster cards that exist, I feel that it still retains that tenseness in the center of the game. So this actually increases my wantingness to play this in a multiplayer sense, but I still prefer the solo mode because I do think it's so snappy. In addition, this expansion includes a new board for the solo mode, and it's just going to cover up that base one and just offer new spots on the board where it's going to be taking some of those orange actions in addition to the green actions on the main board. But everything else is pretty much the same. There's nothing too crazy here, and I think this expansion is just really, really easy to implement. The last thing I wanted to touch base on was a collector's box. So if you do get the collector's box, it does come with a very small mini expansion, and that is the Vassals. They are extremely simple in the way they work. When you get a card that has a vassal, Vassal. A Vassal is a wild, so it's kind of like a purple. However, when you use a Vassal, you're not going to get any conspiracy or any bad things there, but that can be a positive and a negative, right? Because you're not getting coins or provisions from it. And then, but when you do spend the yellow character, you pay one less of whatever the cost is, which is really nice. They're extremely flexible. So if you see a yellow character, generally it's pretty worth it to grab it, particularly because there's really no downside. The only downside is a lot of the yellows will have repetitive workers on their cards, so it may be a little annoying to have to take that. But that's really it here, and that's my total thoughts on the Paladins of the West Kingdom City of Crowns expansion. I think that it is a fantastic expansion. I would include it in any game of Paladins I'm playing. It offers flexibility while still offering some more competitiveness in the center, which means that you're going to have a more tense and tight experience, but while at the same time still being a bit more free and open with the actions that you can take. So I really like this one. That is Paladins of the West Kingdom, the City of Crowns expansion. 1 second, let me get some water. Okay. Now, all right, so the next game here that we're going to be talking about is a head-to-head game by Roxley. This is Radlands. Now, Radlands has you playing as a leader of a post-apocalyptic crew. It's your job to use your water the best as you can to prepare different characters and events in order to take down your opponent's bases. Now, the game itself is extremely simple. On your turn, you collect some water, and then you spend that water on cards or to activate the effects on the cards you've already played. Now, there's two different types of cards in this game. That you can play character cards that are going to have you actually putting characters on the board. When you summon a character, you put a water on it to show it's summoned, and while it has water on it, it cannot be used for anything else. At the end of the round, you clear off all the water. The second thing you can play are events, and these events will actually go on this left side here on this event track. And the way it works is at the end of every round, those events will push forward. And at the start of your turn, if there's a event that's at the very end, it'll trigger its effect. You also have these events that you always start with. These are called your raid cards, and anytime that they get pushed all the way to the end, your opponent has to attack, essentially damage one of their own bases. So it's a very straightforward game. You play your characters, you use your characters' abilities, and the big goal here is to exhaust and then destroy your opponent's bases. Once all three of their bases have been destroyed, you win the game. So the system itself is very straightforward, very clever. Now, unfortunately, this is a game that I'm not super enamored with, and the biggest reason is the pacing of the game. This is a head-to-head card game where you are going to be taking your turn, you do all of your stuff, and then you pass turn to the next player, and then they do all of their stuff. So normally in these head-to-head games, the gameplay needs to be snappy and quick. On your turn, you need to feel like you're doing something, and you need to feel like your strategies and what you're putting forward is going to be something you're content and you're happy about. However, in Radlands, it does not do that. The way that it works is whenever you play a card to the board, you cannot use it that turn. In addition, anytime that card is damaged, while it's damaged, it also cannot be used. After a damaged card becomes unexhausted, if you use a healing on it, it also cannot be used. And the frequency of the times that you are able to damage things, whether it be with event cards, cards in your hand, or the effects of pre-existing cards, a lot of this game is going to be spent with your characters being damaged and you unexhausting those characters with the effects of other cards and just sitting there and not doing much. So it's kind of a weird, goofy system as you just sit consistently, not really able to use your cards. And it's kind of frustrating because the cards that are powerful are generally going to be targeted. And so a lot of the times you're going to play something you've invested a lot in and you're just not going to use that effect. It's extremely goofy and I don't really like it. It's really something that I find detrimental to this style of game. And we couldn't help compare it to Sanctuary, where the turns are so snappy and the system just makes no sense. You're using your cards consistently. You are putting things into play. You are making strategies based on your kind of overarching decks plan. And that's another thing that this game lacks is instead of having separate decks with like scaled cards and kind of knowing the odds of drawing specific cards, there is instead a single shared deck of cards. And so on your turn, you are going to be drawing one card from this shared deck, and you're going to be getting your water resources. And based on what you get, you just have to make the most of it. So there's no real planning, no real amount of strategy here. You're only playing with what you have. So there's it's all tactics in this game. That being said, there are some, I guess, initial strategy choices that you can make based on the different forts that you grab. They'll offer you your starting hand size as well as cards that you get to play. So generally, the weaker forts are going to give you more cards that you start with, so that'll get you on the board faster. But overall, that's really the biggest decision you're making here when it comes to kind of that long-term planning. Everything else is on the fly. Oh, did I get this card? Oh, is this going to be good? Do I just ditch it for its effect? I do like how the cards are multi-use, though. If you see here, they have a ability in the upper left, which is going to be a one-time effect. You pitch the card and get the effect, or you can play them by playing their cost, those event cards, or you can play them as the characters if they're actually people on the board. Now, my favorite thing though about this game has to be I really like the artwork. I think it's absolutely wonderful. The production is insane. It uses that Too Many Bones style of cards where they are the plastic, so you could shuffle and mess with them as much as you like, and you're not going to have any big issues. Oh, it's just so satisfying to play. However, the gameplay itself, in my opinion, is not that satisfying. It's a lot of sitting and waiting and not doing much. You have a couple of actions a turn, and most of your actions seem pretty straightforward in what you need to do. I don't feel like there's a lot of branching decisions here. So that's my initial thoughts on Radlands. I've played just one game of it so far, and it did last, I think, a bit longer than it needed to. But that being said, I don't think it's going to be one that I do seek out to play again. There are a lot of games in this two-player dueling space, and this one does not really shine as one. I think that I'm going to go back to. I think that if I do go back to a game, it's probably going to be Sanctuary or it's going to be Sorcerer. I did enjoy those two quite a bit, and I hope that this one maybe gets. I don't know what they would do for this. The shared deck thing, I think, is a huge detriment to it because you are really at the whim of just whatever you draw, and there's no real prediction or planning for anything in the future. So you're just really hoping, and some of these symbols are just extremely better than others, like potentially getting a damage to turn off a strong effect is extremely powerful. Putting out the unexhausting is pretty dang powerful because you're able to kind of just undo what you're doing. And it felt like you were very much, if your opponent did something, you were just at the mercy of whatever you drew, and hopefully a card that you had could counteract whatever that opponent did. So it was not one that I'm going to go back to. But I'll stop rambling about Radlands. That is the next game on the list here. Our next game here is one that is very, very cute package, a reskin of Raccoon Tycoon. This is Lizard Wizard. Lizard Wizard is a stock market style game of purchasing different wizards that cast different spells, and it's all about this set collection as you want to get a tower for your wizard, and then you want to have spells that are cast by your wizard in your tower. And so for each set of those, you get like 15 points if all the symbols match. But really, you are just trying to do your best to gain mana, which is the cash in this game, in order to actually be able to purchase this thing. So the different way that the game plays, on your turn, you're going to have a couple of options. You can play a reagent card. When you play that, you're going to be getting resources, but also you're going to increase the values of resources. So it's a double-sided card. You'll play it, and whatever it says, you just kind of follow the instructions. And it's a very simple, straightforward game. A lot of your actions are just out there. The biggest thing of hidden information here is the amount of money and the amount of mana you have. And I think that's really, really fun and really neat because the second action you could do is you can purchase a wizard. When you do, you're going to have a bid that starts, and everybody has their hidden information, which is their cash. So nobody really knows how much you're willing to spend and how much you could, really get away with getting this wizard for value wise. There's no bidding with more money than you have, so it's either you're in or you're out. And I really like how this works here. And in the two-player version, it's a one-time bid, so it's kind of scary. So if you do the two-player version, you'll have that one chance to make your offer, and the more familiar you are with the opponent's amount of cash that they have, the more you can kind of press them into a bad position. It has another really cool mechanism that if you're the person who started an auction and you lose, then have no fear, you get to go again, which is really nice. So you're never going to basically lose a turn, which is really, really helpful. So I like that the flow of the game is pretty well done. So after you get the lizards, you can also purchase the towers by spending cash or by spending your resources. And then these towers are going to increase your capacity of storage. Another thing you can do is with the game is you can sell those resources based on whatever their values are in that market. So you have your lizards that are going to cost mana to purchase. You're going to have your towers that increase your resource threshold. And then you can sell those resources for more cash to buy more wizards. So it's kind of cyclical in the way it works. Now you have some other things that you can spend your money on as well. The next thing you can spend money on are these different familiars. And familiars offer you a big huge amount of choice. The first choice that you can have is you just get money, straight cash, and it's not mana money, it's points money. So there's like two currencies in the game. There's mana, which is this blue currency that you're going to use to actually bid on stuff, and that's kind of the actual money. And then there are the points tokens, which are the gold, and these are going to be worth points at the end, and also can be used as a currency to trade straight for towers. So it's if you take one of these familiars, you can get money based on the number of matching symbols. You can also take on the dungeon deck. So the dungeon deck is a little small push your luck section on the bottom of the board. And the way it works is you reveal cards until you hit 2 minions. And so it doesn't matter what the minions are. If you hit them, you just are straight up out. So you really have to figure out, okay, do I want to push my luck here, or do I just take my couple of treasures and win? Because at the end of the game, if you have the most treasures, you also score some extra points. The reason that this is kind of a cool feature in this deck is the last action, and that's getting spells. When you grab the spell cards, they're going to be going in front of you, and a lot of these spells are either going to offer instant effects that kind of help you push you forward, getting new wizards, or they're going to offer you continuous bonuses. And some of these bonuses will affect that dungeon run deck. There are some that say, hey, if I fight a giant, I'm no longer going to be affected by him in the dungeon run, and maybe I'll get a coin instead. So it becomes a better strategy to go for. It's really, really neat, and I think that this is a cool system, and I really like how the spells actually use the different portions of the game. So I really like how that ties together. So that's really it. So you buy a spell, you bid for wizards, you get a tower, you get reagents, you sell reagents, and then whatever you use that money for is kind of up to you. So you have to time things correctly, try to make big sales in order to get big points. This game is extremely simplistic, and it's so straightforward in the way it works, and I think that's a really big positive for the game. So the actions are just dead simple, and I think that the scoring also makes a lot of sense. You need a tower, the wizard goes in your tower, and then you need a spell that matches the wizard in the tower. So it's nothing extremely nothing extremely deep, nothing extremely crazy, but it is one that I think you should give a try because I do think it is quite a lot of fun. So one that I'm enjoying, but probably not one we're going to add to our library. I'm not sure how this would play with huge player counts. I'm not sure if that's going to be something that's going to be a bit crazy when it comes to the bidding and the market itself. The one criticism I do have here is the spell deck. One of the actions allows you to get rid of the spell deck and refresh it, and that could really stink if there's one that maybe you're building towards and there's a lot of people going, so you may just not get the thing that you've been working on because somebody can really just dump it. And that kind of stink, but I guess that's just a problem. Not really a problem, but that's just more of a feature that comes in games with these floating markets. So it's just something to be aware of that may happen to you. But everything else is very clean. The game is huge. It's big. It's got really big art, and I think that really adds to the game because it is very pretty. The art is adorable. The familiars are cute. The little lizards are super adorable. They're a fantastic job here on the art as a whole. But those are all the games that I wanted to talk about today. Everything in particular, Lizard Wizard, Western Legends, and Paladins of West Kingdom and Radlands. Out of all of them, I think that Paladins of West Kingdom is probably the one I'm most impressed with. I think it's just such a seamless integration into the main game, and I think that really adds some very positive interaction into that main area, as well as retaining the spirit of Paladins. It just fits so well. And now we'll move on to some comments. We have Mom Gamer here this morning. Good morning. It says, have I backed Mon Pak? I honestly don't know what that is. So this is something that I need to go check out really quick. Mon Pak. Let me go check out what this is. But if you do have any other comments or any other questions, please let me know down below, and we'll stay on for a little bit here. So Mon Pak Kickstarter. I don't think I've ever heard of this. Let's find it here. Monpak or Nonpak? Monpak? Monpak. I'm not having success finding this. Oh, Monster Apocalypse. Is that what this is? Okay, Monster Apocalypse Kickstarter. Okay. No, I have not backed the Monster Apocalypse Kickstarter. Let's see it here. All right, so Monster Apocalypse Kickstarter. I have not backed the Monster Apocalypse Kickstarter. So first off, I do believe that the Kickstarter is over. Yep, the Kickstarter is over. But when it came to this one, a lot of times when it comes to Mythic games, they're going to usually have all of their stuff on their website afterwards. I was able to pick up Super Fantasy Brawl, Solomon Kane. It was not an issue getting those additional games. And a lot of it is not Kickstarter exclusive. It's Mythic Games exclusive, which means you can get it on their web store afterwards. So have not had an issue with getting any of the previous stuff. So I figured I could wait on this one. I did want to see the reviews on this because this seems like a very, very fun game. I like the idea of being gigantic kaijus and just playing as a kaiju, running around, breaking buildings. It just sounds so fun. It really reminds me that somebody took the idea of Rampage, King of Tokyo, and said, hey, let's actually make this into something with a bit more mechanics so that way we can replicate more fun things. And I like this idea. I think that it translates well into a lot of these brawling style games, and I hope that this one plays well, but I do want to see it and how it is received by others first, and maybe get a chance to play it myself beforehand, before we get into our library. So I just had that flexibility here. It kind of fell into that same realm as Weather Machine for me, where it was one that I could say, okay, this is one that I can wait on, and it's one that I can think about a little bit more. I didn't have to get it now. There was nothing crazy. I need to do this right now about it. But I do really like the artwork. I love the theme, and I think it just makes sense. So I'm curious to give this one a try, and it's one that I'm going to look forward to in the future. But thank you for the question, Mom Gamer, and for being here this morning. And you had the same thoughts. Perfect. That is, yep, exactly where I'm at here. Hopefully, I'll get to give that one a try. So I have some friends that all are into the Kickstarter stuff as well. So hopefully, one of them will get a copy, and we'll see if that's one that we need to jump on when the time comes. So super fun looking, and one that I'm looking forward to play. I think it'll be fun. So that is Monster Apocalypse. If you have any other questions about any of the games that we talked about here, please let me know down in the comments below, or if there's any other games that you'd like me to check out on a future crowdfunding episode. Now, some games that are going to be coming in very soon. So today, actually, we have a copy of Final Girl from Van Ryder Studios, which is super exciting. So it's a new evolution of the Hostage Negotiator game. So super excited to give that one a try. It should be here today. So thrilled. Non-Kickstarter related, we're getting Corrosion delivered as well. That should be here very soon. However, I am going out of town starting tomorrow, so it's gonna be a while before I get to play these. So unfortunately, the cycle will be broken, and I'll have maybe like 1 or 2 games that are gonna be on my shelf that I haven't played, but unfortunate. So right now I have 0 still, so I'm going strong with making sure everything gets played ASAP. And that's a great question. Lizard Wizard or Raccoon Tycoon? That's a good question. I haven't played Raccoon Tycoon, so I cannot comment on which one is better. I can comment that the theme is kind of funky in Lizard Wizard, where your ingredients are like stock markets and what you're trading for. The theme could be anything in Lizard Wizard, so I think that Raccoon Tycoon probably fits just as fine. So with those two, I think that both are fine. I do really like the artwork in Lizard Wizard. I think it's just so pretty. I love that it's just really nice, cool colors. Oh my gosh. It's such a pretty package. So I'm curious. I would love to give Raccoon Tycoon a try. So it seems like a very similar system and with a lot of fun stuff. I do really like the spell cards though in Lizard Wizard, and I'm curious if that translates even into Raccoon Tycoon. I wouldn't know. I'll be honest. I haven't really looked into Raccoon Tycoon. Oh no! I'm so sorry that you're feeling this. Hopefully it'll go the hostage negotiator way and become pretty readily available. I'm sure it will, particularly because I think this theme is just so good. I'm thrilled to give it a try. I love that the different games are different horror movies, and I think that's super fun to be able to go through different mission and just kind of play these out in a different way. It's not going to end as gruesomely, which is pretty exciting. So I'm excited to see what this offers, and it's that familiar hostage negotiator system. So I think that it'll be an easy one to jump into with some minor adjustments. But adding a board is a perfect evolution of the system. So thrilled. Yes. So excited. All right, we'll leave the chat open for another minute or two. If you do have any other questions, I'd love to answer them. Yeah, just let me know what you think this morning. Anything else that's going on your ends? For me, one game that's on the table right now, once again, not Kickstarter, is Lux Eterna. So that one is a really interesting looking real-time card game. So excited to give that one a try. It's on the table right now, hopefully getting to play that before I bounce. But we are heading to New York for Thanksgiving. It should be fantastic. All right. What is the last game I played and thoughts? Technically, the last game I played was Ink and Gold. I played that yesterday night. We had a game night where we played some viticulture and Ink and Gold. And Ink and Gold is fantastic. So I really like that game, actually. It's a small push your luck game, also known as Diamant. And it's extremely simple. And do you stay or do you go? And that's the game as a whole. You're going to be doing your best to collect treasure. And the way it's done is by pooling all these treasure cards onto these cards in the center. And every round you have the choice of do you stay in the area, collect the treasure that you've taken, or sorry, do you stay in the area to collect more treasure, or do you leave and take the treasure with you? It's so simple. And I think that's the beauty of this game is that it's that simple that anybody can play it. It's so approachable and the components are just wondrous. Sorry, I got a runny nose here this morning. I'll get it later. So you're collecting all of these little treasures, and the choice comes when you evacuate the dungeon. There's like a million editions of this game with all sorts of different components, but all these different cards here are going to have treasure values, and based on the number that are playing, they're going to be in this. You're going to deal those out to players. So, like if you're playing with 4 players and you pull a 5, everyone gets a treasure, and the one remaining goes in the center. And if you leave, all the cards in the center that have treasure on them, if you're the only one who left, you take all that cash. But if multiple people leave at the same time, they split that treasure. So it's all about knowing when to stay in, when to leave, and taking things out. It's very quick, and you're also in the middle of all this trying to mitigate different disasters. So you're trying to get treasure while avoiding pitfalls. So it's very simple, very straightforward, but it's a lot of fun. My kids are really enjoying it at work, and friends and family enjoy it a lot too. And then another question here: what is the last book or graphic novel I read? The last graphic novel I read is actually the Zombicide Simon comic. So they did recently a big Kickstarter where they offered a bunch of promo cards. There was a Death May Die comic, a Rising Sun comic, and a Zombicide comic. I am in the middle of reading the Zombicide comic. So honestly, the comics are okay. They're nothing crazy special, but the art is great. The pace of the comics are fun, but nothing extremely deep or exciting. I think they're fine. I think the promos are really cool, and I really like using those in the game. So if you were to recommend one, if I were to recommend one, I would recommend the Cthulhu Death May Die promos. I think that they are extremely awesome. They actually change the way the cultists work in the game by giving them new special abilities. The others are just additional survivors, and the Rising Sun modules are pretty cool. But other than that, yeah, I don't really recommend reading them. They're okay. The art is really great, but I would not recommend them for like a deep, thoughtful read. So, if you have any books that you've read, let me know. I'm curious, Mom Gamer. What have you been reading recently? Do you have a recommendation? And then, yes, I will be packing games for my trip. I actually have a video going up in a day, I think, or a day or two. That is my top 10 airplane board games. So they are going to be the games that I'm actually bringing with me on the trip, a couple of them at least. And I think that that's a really cool like aspect of gaming where I know that there is a big trend of getting a big game in a little box, but I need a game that doesn't take a lot of room on a table, and I think that's really fun. So these are games that you can play on like the tray that you pull down in an airplane, and I think that's just a lot of fun. So we'll do that and see how it works. But these are games that I know from personal experience work and things that I'm actually taking on my trip. So be on the lookout for that. I think it's going to be out tomorrow, actually, maybe tomorrow or Monday. I don't remember, but I have a bunch of videos prepared for when I leave. I think there will be a couple of days off, unfortunately, so I will actually miss my daily upload thing, but I'll get to take a break, which I think is much needed. So that is that. So be on the lookout for that. And then we have your book you're enjoying right now, The Last Man. Why? Okay. I've seen trailers for this TV show rendition, and it does sound interesting. I'm curious to see, like, I'm sure there are lots of secrets that kind of are about why this happened to the different, the population of Earth, how it's been restructured. It sounds like a very cool premise for a story. So sounds cool. Fantastic. And then next one here. How about TV shows? Last question. So TV shows here. I don't actually really watch TV that much, if we're being honest. I'm mostly playing games all the time. I think the last TV show I did watch though was that I actually sat down and watched. I think it was actually Squid Game. I heard really good things about it, and my wife and I wanted to watch it, so that was one that we watched over an extended period of time. But it was good. I enjoyed that one. I thought that there were some episodes in there that were just like extremely gut wrenching and just like, oh my goodness. So a lot of emotions and just good TV. It was really good TV. I loved how there were actual stakes throughout it because of the battle royale setting. So it's a very solid one in my opinion. So that's Squid Game. And then yes, absolutely. A lot of people will ask me to check out shows and stuff, and I'll just be like, yeah, maybe. I can never say that I'm gonna watch a TV show. It's just not gonna happen normally. So it's kind of funny when conversation comes up. I'm like, I don't know if that's gonna happen because I consistently have something on the table. So that's usually where my attention and focus is. So generally, I'll watch movies. I do like going to movie theaters, and that's something that Ariana and I really like doing. So that's something that we end up doing together a lot. So I'll generally, if I do watch television, it's with Ariana, and if I do anything else, it's usually with Ariana. So I try to dedicate time for her with that. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you so much for being here this morning and for tuning in. I hope that's you found this useful at least, or even if you just enjoyed the conversation, it's great to have you this morning. So awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Mom Gamer. And thank you everybody who's watching this at a later date. Ah, fantastic. So super, super exciting. All these new Kickstarter games are coming in. This is like the month. They are just going to start streaming in consistently now. We have not only that, but also all the pre-order retail games are going to start coming in. This is going to be a crazy next couple of months with just the amount of games that are going to get played. So if you are looking for content like this in the future, please stick around on the channel and see what comes up. But thank you so much for watching and for being here this morning. Thank you, Mom Gamer, again for coming in this morning and joining the live chat, and everybody who's here at any time. I really appreciate your support for the Side Game channel. Thank you so much. Side Game strong, everybody. Have a great rest of your